A brave woman who chose peace over revenge. The village elders said she had every right to destroy him. The law was on her side. Her family stood ready with weapons sharpened and rage burning hot in their chests. Even the women who once whispered about her now nodded in approval at the thought of vengeance. But she stood at the crossroads between two paths, looking at the man who had shattered her world and made a choice that no one expected. She chose something that looked like weakness to those who did not understand true strength. Her name was Amara, and she lived in a small settlement where justice moved swiftly and brutally. The land was harsh and unforgiving, so the people had become the same way. When someone wronged you, there was an expectation that you would answer with equal or greater force. To do otherwise was to invite more suffering to show the world you were easy prey. Amara had grown up watching this cycle spin endlessly like a wheel stuck in deep mud going nowhere, but digging deeper with each rotation. She had seen families torn apart over petty disputes that escalated into blood feuds lasting generations. She had watched children inherit their parents' hatred, like a poisoned legacy passed down through the years. The man who wronged her was named Cato. He had been her business partner in a small trading company they built together over 7 years of hard work. They bought goods from the neighboring regions and sold them in the local markets, splitting profits fairly, and building something that provided for both their families. Amara trusted him completely. She had introduced him to her suppliers, had vouched for his character, when others questioned his background, had even loaned him money from her own savings when his daughter fell ill. That trust made his betrayal cut deeper than any blade could. Cato had systematically stolen from their business over the course of 18 months. He created false ledgers showing expenses that never existed. He underreported sales and pocketed the difference. He sold inventory directly to buyers and kept the money for himself. By the time Amara discovered what was happening, he had taken almost everything. The business was ruined beyond saving, buried under debts she did not know existed. Her reputation in the trading community was destroyed because she had signed documents guaranteeing payments they could no longer make. Suppliers she had worked with for years would not return her messages. Her family savings were gone, spent covering the shortfalls she had not understood were manufactured. When she confronted Cato, he did not deny it. He laughed at her. He said she was a fool for trusting him, for believing that someone like her deserved success. He mocked her for her kindness, said it was a weakness that made her easy to exploit. He told her she should have known better, should have protected herself, should have expected that someone would eventually take advantage of her good nature. Then he left the region, entirely taking his family to a city 3 days' travel away where he used her money to start a new life. Amara spent weeks in a darkness so complete she could barely function. She stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping through the night, stopped caring about anything beyond the burning rage that consumed her thoughts. Her husband tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. Her children asked what was wrong, and she could not find words gentle enough to explain that the world was crueler than she had let them believe. Her sisters came to her home and sat with her in silence because they knew no words would help. Then one day, her oldest brother arrived. He was a man respected throughout the region for his strength and his unwillingness to tolerate disrespect. He had connections with people who could find anyone who could make anyone pay for their crimes. He sat across from Amara and told her plainly that he would handle this for her. He would travel to the city where Cato had fled. He would take back what was stolen, and he would make sure Cato never wronged anyone again. He would restore her honor and make an example that would echo through every trading post and market in the territory. All she had to do was give him permission. Amara looked at her brother and saw genuine love in his eyes. He was offering her what their culture demanded, what everyone expected, what she herself had dreamed about during those sleepless nights. She imagined Cato suffering as she had suffered losing everything, as she had lost feeling the terror and helplessness that she had felt. The fantasy was sweet and dark and seductive. It whispered promises of satisfaction, of closure, of justice finally served. But then she thought about what would happen after. Cato had family too. He had brothers and cousins and sons. If her brother destroyed Cato, those men would not simply accept it. They would come for her family. Her brother would have to fight them. Some would die. Then their families would seek revenge against her family. The wheel would turn, and her children and her nieces and nephews would inherit a war that started because of her pain. She would transform her suffering into a legacy of suffering that would outlive her by decades. She thought about Cato's daughter, the one who had been ill, the one Amara had helped save with the money she loaned. That girl had done nothing wrong. If Amara unleashed vengeance on her father, what would become of that child? Would she grow up hating Amara, hating everyone associated with Amara, carrying that poison in her heart until she was old enough to act on it? Amara realized that revenge would not heal her. It would not restore her business or her savings or her reputation. It would not undo the betrayal or erase the nights she spent crying. It would only spread the pain outward like ripples in water, touching more and more lives until the original source was forgotten, but the damage continued endlessly. She told her brother no. He stared at her in disbelief. He argued with her, explained that she was making a mistake, that people would see her as weak, that Cato would get away with his crime and feel emboldened to hurt others. Her husband agreed with her brother. Her sisters were divided. The village elders called her foolish. Neighbors she had known her entire life looked at her with confusion and disappointment, but Amara held firm. She told her brother that she would not be the person who started a war. She would not sacrifice other people's futures to satisfy her need for revenge. She would not let Cato's cruelty turn her into someone cruel. She would not become the thing that had hurt her. Instead, she made a different choice. She went to the temple in the center of the village, and she spoke with the priestess there. The priestess was an old woman who had lived through more grief than most people could imagine. She had lost her entire family to a blood feud when she was young. She had chosen the temple as a way to step outside the cycle of violence that had taken everyone she loved. The priestess listened to Amara's story without judgment. Then she asked Amara what she truly wanted, not what she was supposed to want, or what others expected, but what would actually bring her peace. Amara sat with that question for a long time. Finally, she admitted that what she wanted was to rebuild her life without the weight of hatred dragging her down. She wanted her children to grow up believing that good people existed in the world. She wanted to prove that trust and kindness were not weaknesses, even when they were exploited. She wanted to break the cycle that had trapped her community for generations. The priestess nodded and told her that this would be harder than revenge. Revenge was easy because it had a clear target and a clear action and a clear endpoint. Choosing peace meant choosing uncertainty and vulnerability and the long, slow work of healing. It meant forgiving not because Cato deserved forgiveness, but because carrying hatred was too heavy a burden for the life she wanted to build. Amara began the work of reconstruction. She sold everything that remained of value. She took work that was beneath her previous status, doing manual labor in the market she used to supply. She swallowed her pride daily and asked for help from people who had written her off. Some refused her, but others surprised her with their compassion. Slowly, she began to rebuild not a business, but something smaller and more sustainable. She learned to trust carefully, but not to close herself off entirely. She taught her children about what had happened, using it as a lesson, not about the cruelty of the world, but about the importance of choosing who you become in response to that cruelty. Years passed. Amara never became wealthy again, but she achieved a stability that was enough. Her children grew up watching their mother choose dignity over bitterness. They learned that strength was not just about fighting back, but about carrying on despite the weight of injustice. Her husband, who had initially disagreed with her choice, came to respect the wisdom in it as he watched their family avoid the conflicts that consumed so many others around them. Word of Amara's choice spread through the trading networks. Some mocked her for it, but others were quietly inspired. A few people who had been wronged in similar ways sought her out to ask how she had done it, how she had let go of the rage that felt so justified and so consuming. She told them honestly that she had not let go of it entirely. There were still days when she thought about Cato and felt the old anger rise up hot and bitter in her chest, but she had learned to acknowledge it without acting on it, to feel it, without letting it control her decisions. Then one day, years after the betrayal, a messenger arrived at Amara's home. He carried a letter from Cato. Amara's hand shook as she opened it. She expected excuses or justifications or perhaps even another cruel taunt. Instead, she found something she had never anticipated: an apology. Cato wrote that he had been living with the weight of what he had done. He described how the money he stole had not brought him happiness. His new business had failed because he could not build anything lasting on a foundation of theft and lies. His family had suffered as they moved from place to place, trying to outrun his reputation. His daughter had asked him why they had to leave their home, and he had no answer he could give her that did not reveal what he had become. He wrote that he had heard about Amara's choice not to pursue revenge. He had expected her family to come for him, and had spent years looking over his shoulder waiting for the violence he knew he deserved. When it never came, he began to question everything. He realized that Amara's mercy had given him something he had not earned and did not deserve: a chance to change. He could not undo the harm he had caused, but he could stop causing more harm. He could try to become someone different. The letter included money. Not enough to repay what he had stolen, but what he could afford after working for 3 years to save it. He did not ask for forgiveness. He said he understood that what he had taken could not be truly returned, but he wanted her to know that her choice had changed him. Her refusal to become like him had shown him that another way was possible. Amara sat with the letter for a long time. She felt many things at once: anger at what it had cost her to reach this point, satisfaction that Cato had finally felt the weight of his actions, sadness for all the years lost to his betrayal and her recovery, but most of all, she felt something unexpected: relief. The choice she had made years ago had been vindicated not because Cato had changed, but because she had proven to herself that her values were not contingent on other people's behavior. She did not write back to Cato. She kept the money and used it to help her daughter pay for an apprenticeship with a respected craftsman. She folded the letter and placed it in a box with other important documents, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Then she continued with her life. Amara's story became a quiet legend in her region. Not the kind of story that gets told at festivals or written into songs, but the kind that mothers tell daughters when teaching them about strength. The kind that gets shared in market stalls between traders who understand that trust is the foundation of all commerce, and that cynicism destroys more than betrayal ever could. She never regretted her choice. There were people who still thought she had been foolish, who believed that Cato had gotten away with his crime. But Amara knew something they did not. Revenge would have given her one moment of satisfaction, followed by a lifetime of consequences. Peace gave her a lifetime of moments where she could look at herself and her children and know that she had chosen to be someone worth respecting. She had broken a cycle that had consumed countless others. She had proved that bravery was not just about fighting, but about knowing when to lay down your weapons and walk a harder path.